Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the Women's Public Leadership Program Leadership Spotlight Series. My name is Tory Sendek, and I'll be your host kind of today as we have the great opportunity to talk to Betsy Ankney. Betsy is a brilliant political strategist and operative, a leader, a role model, and in full disclosure, one of my closest friends. So, it's a real treat to be with her today and with all of you. I'll turn it over to Betsy to kind of talk about her background in just a moment, but I want to mention a few of her career highlights, including her most recent job with Nikki Haley for president as a campaign manager. Betsy's also served as the political director of the National Republican Senatorial Committee and as campaign manager for several top-tier statewide races. So looking forward to hearing about that. I also want to announce that Betsy was the recipient of WPLN's 2024 Architect of Society Award, which is inspired by Harriet Beecher Stowe's words that women are the real architects of society. And the award is presented to a woman who exemplifies effective, principled leadership and is true public servant. So I think that's really a testament to Betsy here. So, I've been fortunate to be coworkers first with Betsy and then, then friends truly through her professional and leadership journey. So I'm excited to be here today. She tells her story and answers some questions. So Betsy, welcome. I'd love to kick it over to you, kind of share a little bit about your background, and then we can jump into some questions.
Yeah, it's so great to be with all of you today. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be with some of you in Colorado, but circumstances came up that were unavoidable. But yeah, as Tory said, we have been very good friends for a long time. Actually, my whole career in politics started thanks to a phone call that I had with then Tory McGuire in between classes during my sophomore year of college, where she was the deputy director of member services at the RNC at the time, and I was applying to be an intern, and she conducted my phone interview, and the rest is kind of history. Ended up at the RNC a couple of years later, ended up roommates with her, so it's really come full circle. So as Tory said, I most recently managed Nikki Haley's presidential campaign. I know a lot of folks, there was a big Women for Nikki contingent that some of you may have been a part of. That was really a blast and a pleasure to get to know a lot of you. But I started out as an intern at the Republican National Committee. Tory, as my intern coordinator, was kind enough to give me probably the coolest job, which was working on the convention. So I ended up actually moving to Minnesota. I worked on the convention for about 6 months and then kind of hit the ground running from there. I went back to the RNC, bounced around on a number of different campaigns, briefly tried my hand at fundraising, decided it wasn't for me, and then ultimately ended up managing Ron Johnson's Senate campaign in Wisconsin in 2016, and then went to Illinois to manage Bruce Rauner's campaign in Illinois for governor, and then ended up at the NRSC, as Tory mentioned, in the 2020 cycle when I was the political director, and then started working for Nikki Haley in 2021, running her PAC Stand for America, and then most recently, obviously, on the presidential campaign. So I am back in DC as we speak, after spending like a month running around Europe, taking a little break. But I've been in and out of DC really for the past 15 years on different campaigns, different races, different party committees. It's fun to be here with Tory and all of you.
Yeah, that's great. Well, a well-deserved little trip this summer. So I hope you've had a great time, and we're glad you're back and can share your time with us today. So, all right, well, we'll jump into some questions. I do just want to mention this is an off-the-record conversation. We love, to kind of get into the weeds of these questions, hear from Betsy, her perspective on a lot of things. So we just kindly ask that this is all off the record. All right, so I'll jump in with this first kind of positioning this conversation. So it's all about leadership and Betsy's roles and what has gotten her to where she is today. So in exploring kind of how the past positions you've had, the ones, you were just in most recently with Nikki Haley, can you tell us kind of what in those different jobs has helped you prepare, for your role as campaign manager for Nikki Haley? Like, what past positions, kind of give us like your perspective of what has really prepared you for the role as campaign manager?
So it's interesting because I think every campaign and every candidate is totally different, right? I managed 2 different statewide races. One was a Senate race in Wisconsin. One was a governor's race in Illinois. Senate races and governor's races are different. Each state is different. Each candidate is different. The dynamics of the race are different. But I think that the fundamentals kind of come down to your job as a manager. There's a lot of sort of fun, sexy things that you do in terms of messaging and creative and ads on air and all of that. But at the end of the day, your job is to manage time, money, and people. And so I think that those skill sets, the Bruce Schroeder campaign, for example, we ultimately were not successful. We were, running uphill in Illinois, which was a challenge and a whole other story about Chicago politics. But it was a massive campaign. I mean, we had a budget of close to $100 million. We had a staff of 90. And so from just a scaling standpoint, that was a huge help to understand how to be able to manage and run an organization of that size, which ultimately was, what the size of the Nikki Haley presidential campaign ended up roughly being. So I think that sort of honing those skills over the years has been incredibly helpful. And I think the other big thing on the people side is, particularly when you are in a tough campaign, which a lot of you have been, a lot of you will be, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of people who are telling you every day that you are going to lose, that you are down, that you are doing it wrong, that, there's just a lot of people sort of chirping in your ear and a lot of just noise and clutter out there. And I think understanding how to tune that out and filter through that is incredibly important, not only for your own sanity, but so that you can continue to do those basic functions and focus on what needs to get done every day to move the ball, and make sure that you are making sure that your entire team, whether it's 2 people or 90 people, are focused on the task at hand and also know how to tune everything out and not pay attention to, everything else that's going on, what's being said in the press, and really focus on the job at hand. And the Johnson campaign in 16 in particular was very helpful early on in kind of honing that skill set, because there was no other way to do it. I mean, if we paid attention to the public polls, if we paid attention to the pundits, I would have taken a nap, we would have lost, and I wouldn't be sitting here today. So I think, there's every campaign, every candidate is different, but at the end of the day, time, money, and people are the 3 kind of key things that you need to focus on as a campaign manager. And I think the more you do, the more you experience, the better you get at managing budgets, managing big teams, and understanding the importance of not only your time, your candidate's time, but your team's time.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm going to kind of build on those sort of skill sets that you just outlined, to skip to a question kind of come down the line regarding the leadership skills. So taking those 3 areas you just mentioned, how, and, what are the most important things that translate into being the leader that you've really developed over the course of your career into?
So, I think those 3 things from a campaign management standpoint, and really, frankly, like if you're running a business, no matter what you are doing, it comes down to managing time, money, and people, right? And campaigns really are like running a business. You are essentially building a small business from scratch. You are marketing your product, you are raising funds, and you are mapping it out so that you go bankrupt at the exact right time. It's really kind of a fascinating process. But, I think on top of that, I think that having, particularly as women in leadership positions, having sort of the confidence and courage to tackle whatever comes your way, I think is incredibly important. And I think that some of that is innate and some of that is sort of honed over time. And, having courage to say no to something, having the courage to go against the grain, having the courage to walk into your morning meeting every day, knowing that, you know, all the little eyes on your team have seen the latest poll that shows you down 20 points. And you have to sort of set the tone at the top and have the courage to walk in and say, okay, this is what we need to get done today. This is how we're going to change that. So having the courage to speak up when you think something is wrong, having the courage to, you know, make a decision and stick to it, having the courage to admit when you are wrong, which has happened a lot. You know, I think that is kind of the single biggest sort of leadership skill and sort of quality that like I look for in others and I try to sort of keep in mind for myself.
Yeah, well, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And just using that word courageous and having the courage throughout, you know, the many hats you wear in these leadership positions, it's absolutely true. You have to have the courage to do it. And I love that you point out that that's what you look for in working and hiring others, because that's so important. So, okay, you know, WPLN, you know, is building a network of support for women leaders. Can you talk to us a little bit about which woman helped you on your journey, you know, and how they became your mentors? And, you know, I feel like I have a little bit of an insight to the many women who worked with, which is incredible. Can you?
Yeah. No, I've been very blessed in that I've had from, you know, early in my career, really great female leaders and mentors. Tory being one of them as my very first technical boss and, you know, intern coordinator. But then, you know, it's funny actually, my boss at the Republican National Convention in 2008, Maria Sino was the CEO and Mel Raines was the vice president. And Maria, I actually had dinner with her last night and she's fantastic. She's this 4'11" little dynamo. She ran the NRCC when she was 35 and led the takeover, like the Republican House takeover in 94. She's just a total force of nature. And her, and then Mel Raines, who is now the first female CEO of the Pacers in Indianapolis, you know, were sort of my two first bosses, and they were incredible leaders. I watched them, you know, sort of, again, have that courage to do what needs to be done, make those decisions. I also watched in particular how they ran meetings, which is such a sort of funny thing that can be overlooked. But, you know, Mel in particular, it's like you went into a meeting, you knew exactly what the agenda was, you knew exactly what you needed to accomplish. You know, you went around, you got done what needed to get done, and then you moved on. And I think that it's funny, like I've thought a lot about those early years when I was just a fly on the wall and sort of absorbing some of that. And I've stayed close with both of them throughout what they've been doing and what I've been doing. And they've just been an incredible source of support and strength and inspiration. You know, Nikki obviously is an incredible mentor and leader. And she's someone who I, you know, not only have, you know, loved working for and, you know, was honored to work for, but she's someone who really does promote and encourage women to push themselves and push through the fear and do what needs to be done. And, you know, she's really about sort of building people up. And one of the things that was notable and I think rare, you know, when the campaign ended, she took the time to make sure that every single person on the team landed somewhere and would do whatever she could do to help them to make sure that they, you know, found a job, knew what they wanted to do, help talk through things with them. And I think taking that interest in people in your team is really important. And I think that, you know, it's important overall, men or women, but I think that women in particular, it's incredibly helpful to have someone to bounce those things off of and talk through and say, okay, you know, I'm doing X, you did Y, like, you know, how did you approach it? How did you get there? And, you know, one of the things that I've learned from all of these fantastic women is there's no straight line. There's no direct path. There's no right way to do it. It's about figuring out that what makes sense for you and sort of forging your own path and figuring out how to get from A to Z.
Yeah, Oh, that's great. And, that was actually going to be my next question is, why do you think the mentorship is so important for women? But you really touched upon it. So I don't know if you want to add anything to it.
Well, I think the one thing that I will add to that is I think that, I think women, like, we're harder on ourselves, right? And I think that, it's like we joked with candidate recruitment before, like, you never met a man who was like, I don't know if I'm qualified to run for Congress. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, those conversations never happen. But you meet an incredibly capable, successful woman who's like, I don't know if I'm ready to do that. And so I think having, encouraging each other and supporting each other and being like, no, like, you are more than capable of doing that, and you can and you should do that, and we'll all be there to help you along the way. I think is important. I think that women can do, whatever we set our minds to. And I think that often it's, making sure that you have the confidence and the courage to take the next step and to push through the fear and to do what's uncomfortable. Because we're more than capable of doing it. I think we just have to make sure that we have the confidence to sort of take the next step. And frankly, I think men don't have that problem as much.
Yeah, that's so true. And I mean, that's one of the great things about WPLN is that it creates that support system, which is awesome to tap into. All right. Well, I'd love, kind of moving into, when did you realize that public service was going to kind of stay an element in your career? Like, did you know from, obviously when we started talking those many years ago about the internship, but what other paths did you consider? Did you always know public service was going to be the direction you want to go in?
I initially wanted to go to law school. Like, that was kind of what I guess when I was in high school, I was kind of interested in. And, it really was, Tory and dumb luck that brought me to the RNC. Like, I applied, I'm from Ohio. I remember applying to different, internships on the Hill and other places. And I think maybe even like a law firm or two. And I ended up getting the RNC, and I was like, this sounds really cool. And this Tory girl seems pretty fun. Like, and,
what an honor.
and once I got the internship and was there, they, hired me to work on the convention, and then I sort of caught the bug and it was off to the races. So I think that I initially thought that I, would maybe go to law school, I was actually really interested in foreign policy, which is sort of fun now that, that obviously touches my world even more. But I didn't sort of set out thinking I was just going to be like a straight campaign political person. Mm-hmm. And once I sort of got involved and caught the bug, I loved it and just never looked back and just kept going.
That's great. That's awesome. All right. So I am going to kind of go in a little bit of a different direction here, but, as you know, this month we're celebrating the anniversary of the 19th Amendment's ratification. It's going to be on August 26th. So although the 19th Amendment has guaranteed women's right to vote for over 100 years, women do remain unrepresented in government. What challenges do you think specifically exist for women who may identify as center-right when they seek to be leaders? What have you seen, and what do you think the reason for that is today?
So I think the number one hurdle is kind of what I touched on before. It's women sort of taking the leap and getting involved and, having the confidence to know that they can do it. They deserve a seat at the table. Like, they should be there. I think that's sort of the number one barrier, is just getting women to sort of take that next step and run for office and be more involved. And I do think, again, and you touched on it, but, groups like this are so important in making sure that women know that they have that network and, talking to women, like how do you handle childcare? Like, what do you, like all of the things that it's not part of member orientation, right? Like it's the stuff that you have to think about that no one ever really talks about. So I think making sure that those support systems are in place to talk through those things is incredibly helpful so that women do take the leap. And then look, I think that, not only are women harder on women, I think that, people generally are harder on women. I think women can be hard on other women. And so I think that making sure that, we continue to kind of chip away at that and just continue to kind of take the leap and put ourselves out there is incredibly important. And look, I mean, I think one of the most rewarding things about the Haley campaign was watching all of these young girls and young women be so inspired by Nikki and what she was doing. And sort of organically, I didn't even know this was a thing, but I guess at Taylor Swift concerts, like girls like give her like homemade friendship bracelets. Like, these girls started doing that with Nikki at our rallies, and it was like not something that was planned. It just sort of happened organically, and especially in the Super Tuesday swing when we were all over the country. I mean, it was like really heartwarming. And, I know like Tory's little daughter Isabel came and had a friendship bracelet. Like, just having more women involved and continuing to support them along the way and making sure that they have, not only the resources that they need to be successful, but just the encouragement, I think is hugely helpful. And I think, the more we can all pave the way and stay involved and sort of pay it forward and bring people up through the industry, whether it's running for office or managing campaigns or whatever it is, I think is really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm just kind of thinking, you touched on the challenges and in there the opportunities as well for those who are looking, for some sort of leadership in the public service sector. Are there any other factors, and I do kind of smile. I have a young daughter. When you think about like, babysitters and childcare and that kind of thing, like it is all part of things that women do have to consider. But just want to, could you elaborate a little bit more on, for those who are seeking, some role in a public leadership in their professional lives, what other factors should they consider? And then, is it worth it?
I mean, I think that is it worth it is totally a personal question, right? I think that, I'm all for, more women running for office and getting involved, but I think that it really is a personal decision on, okay, like, does this make sense for me right now with my family? The one thing I will say is, there's never a perfect time, right? Like, there's always going to be something. And I think that, I think a lot of people also don't want to run and lose. And I totally understand that fear, right? But I think that you never know where it's going to lead to. And I think that even if, let's say you are looking at running for state house and you're in a tough district and that's where you live and that's where your base is, let's say you win in a primary, you ultimately lose the general. The sort of network and support and skill set that you gain just by going through that process, win or lose, is going to be hugely helpful with whatever you want to do next, whether, lines are redrawn and the district is better, or a state Senate seat opens up and all of a sudden you have a network that you've built on the ground and you've developed your public speaking skills and you've developed a donor network. Like, you never know when lightning's going to strike. You never know when that perfect time is going to be. And so putting yourself out there and building that network and sort of taking the leap, again, like having the courage and the confidence to just sort of go for it, I think is helpful. And I think you obviously always run to win, right? Whether you're running a campaign, whether you're running for office. But sometimes you have to look at it not just as like, okay, am I going to win or lose, but like, how is this going to expand me? How is this going to make me better for whatever I want to do next? And I think that that's something that women in particular should look at too, because the more you do it, the better you are. And obviously you run to win, but you also should think through kind of those steps on, how could this help me with whatever might come next? And so I think that that's something to think about. I also think that, there just really never is a perfect time, right? Like, people sometimes say in Senate races, oh, like you wait for the open seat. But guess what? If there's an open seat, you're going to be running against 10 other people in a primary. So there's sort of pluses and minuses to any of those environments. There's presidential versus midterms. There's all of those things to consider. And again, every race, every campaign, every state, every district, every candidate is different, right? But, I think you just have to really think through all of those options and not just say, oh, this seems like a good easy path, or this seems like a sure win, or I'm going to wait for this to happen. Really think through what all of those things mean and how that impacts not only the race that you're going to run, but how that impacts your life too.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to turn it back on you here in terms of whatever might come next. What are you looking to do in the next phase of your leadership journey here, Betsy?
So that is the $1 question, right? I really don't fully know. I have really taken a break for the first time in I don't even know how long. I'm still helping Nikki with kind of keeping things moving and all of that, but I really don't know. I'm kind of taking my time. I do think that I want to work with people I like, for causes and candidates that I believe in. Like I kind of want to take my time and figure out exactly what I want to do. And I'm honestly just enjoying having a little time to travel and see friends and family and read novels and all the things that I have not had a chance to do for a very long time. So stay tuned.
Well, I'm speaking on behalf of all of us here. We're so excited to see what's next and hope to enjoy some time with you in the meantime.
Yes.
Great. Okay, I've got one more kind of question that we can go to the audience here. So if you could give one piece of advice generally to the women looking to put themselves out there to be leaders, what would it be?
I mean, take the leap. You can do it. Like there's going to be a zillion things in your head and reasons why you should. There are going to be people who tell you that you can't. There's going to be people who tell you that you're not qualified or you're not good enough or it's not the right time. Like if you want to do it and you've thought through all of those things, do it. Like take the leap, have the confidence, like you can get it done. And everyone who's part of this community will help you do it.
That sounds great. Yeah. I think we just give me 1 second here. Yeah, we do one question, just, kind of building on that last question for young women who are just getting into the beginning of their careers here. It is a tough political climate at times. What is your advice and what do you say to them who kind of question them?
I mean, I would say the biggest thing, especially when you're starting out, is like, just work hard. Like that's the single biggest thing that like, there's no, especially when you're, just starting in your career, like taking on any task, big or small, and doing it, with gusto. Like I will never forget when I was working on the convention for Marie and Mel, like I genuinely, like one of the things I had to do, like I would go like fill up the cars with gas. And I, just was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go fill up the cars with gas. And afterwards they were like, you did it without complaint. It was just sort of a menial task. And you just were like, yeah, nope, like happy to do it, ready to go. Like here they are, washed too. And those little things, like, bosses, leaders, your direct report, whatever, like they look to that and they appreciate that. And so I think doing those little things, doing them well, even if it seems menial or non-important, that's going to give your sort of bosses, like it's going to make them respect you. It's going to make them trust you, and it's going to make them give you more responsibility. So I would say just work hard, like ask for more, ask what else you can do to help, learn as much as you can, and you'll figure out the rest.
That's great. And we've got, I think, time for one more question here. All right. So if someone decides to run for office, how did they find a campaign team? Like, where are the resources? And I think WPLN can speak to that. But what would you say is like your immediate next step if you decide to run for office?
So I think it does depend on kind of where you're running, what you're running for, But I do think that, like, how do you find a campaign team? Like, look to the people who have done it before. Like, whether it's people in this network, whether it's, someone who on the ground in your district who maybe, ran for state senate one time, like, talk to people who have done it before, figure out what they liked, what they didn't like, who they used, what they thought was good, what they thought was bad. There's also a lot of resources, whether it's, a state party, there's different committees that help with all of that. But I think that the best thing to do is to talk to someone who has done it before. And I think particularly, with a network like this with women, like, even if someone is not from your state, is not from your district, someone through all of these different groups who has been through what you're about to go through. And so lean on them, ask for their advice. They might not know who would make the most sense for your race, but they might know someone else who can give you advice. So just lean on your network. And I would also say, like, be choosy about it. There are a lot of consultants who just want to make a buck off of you. And I think that interview multiple people, like, talk to a lot of people. Even if you don't end up hiring them, you will learn something from each of those conversations. So particularly if you're running for the first time, talk to as many people as you can, and, sort of sift through and make your decision from there. And I really do think, like, the women as part of this network and others can help you sort of sift through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was a great question to end on too. And, just a shout out to the Women's Public Leadership Network and all the work they do to educate, organize, and just inspire Senator-right women to run for office, and give them the tools and network and resources and all the stuff you've mentioned throughout this conversation to do so. So that's it. Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Tory. Always fun to be with you.
It was great to see you, and thank you to all who joined. I hope you found this to be, a great conversation, hearing, much more from Betsy. And I would encourage you to talk to your contacts, with this network, and, see what's up the next step. And thank you all for your time.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Take care.